I watched them whisper behind her back at that charity dinner. Designer dresses, fake smiles, treating my wife like she didn't belong. They had no idea the woman serving them water controlled half the pharmaceutical patents in this country. Sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones nobody notices. If you've ever been underestimated, stick around. This story will remind you why silence can be the loudest power move. And if you enjoy this, hit that subscribe button because I share real stories about real power that nobody talks about. Let me take you back to that night. It was the annual Medical Research Foundation Gala, held at the Grand Ballroom of the Riverside Hotel. You know the type of event: crystal chandeliers, orchestra music floating through the air, and enough diamonds in that room to fund a small country. I'm Robert, and I've attended dozens of these functions over the years. I'm an architect, commercial buildings mostly, shopping centers, office complexes, that sort of thing. I do well for myself, but in this crowd, I'm just another face writing a modest check. My wife Diane was with me that night, but not in the way you'd expect. She'd volunteered to work the event. Yes, work it. She was wearing a simple black dress, her hair pulled back, moving through the crowd with trays of champagne and water glasses. I knew people found it strange. Why would Robert Hutchinson's wife be serving drinks at a charity gala? But if you knew Diane, really knew her, you'd understand this is just who she is. We'd arrived together, and she'd kissed me at the entrance before heading to the volunteer coordinator. "I'll see you after the announcements," she'd said, with that gentle smile of hers. "Try to enjoy yourself." And off she went, while I walked into that sea of tuxedos and evening gowns alone. I'd barely made it to the bar when I noticed them. 3 women standing near the silent auction tables, their eyes following Diane as she moved through the crowd. The tall one in the emerald gown was Patricia Westmont, old money, historic family name, the kind of woman who still believed bloodlines mattered. Next to her stood Victoria Ashford, married to a federal judge, always perfectly composed, always calculating. And then there was Margot Chen Sterling, new money, trying desperately to look like old money, overcompensating with every gesture. I watched Patricia lean toward the others, her lips moving behind her champagne glass. They were talking about Diane. I could tell from the way their eyes kept darting in her direction, from the barely concealed smirks. My jaw tightened, but I stayed where I was. Diane had warned me about this. "Don't react," she'd told me in the car. "Just let it go." But it wasn't easy to let it go, not when I saw Victoria actually snap her fingers at Diane, summoning her like you'd call a dog. Diane walked over gracefully, her tray balanced perfectly. I couldn't hear what Victoria said, but I saw Diane nod politely and move away. The 3 women laughed the moment she was out of earshot. I drifted closer, pretending to examine an auction item, a weekend at some vineyard estate. Patricia was in the middle of a sentence when I got within hearing range. "Can you imagine? If my husband had married someone like that, I'd simply die of embarrassment." Victoria touched her arm, nodding toward me, and they suddenly became very interested in the auction catalog. "Robert," Patricia sang out, her voice dripping with false warmth. "How wonderful to see you. We were just saying what a lovely event this is." I smiled, shook hands, made small talk, but I was learning something important that night. I was learning exactly who these women were beneath their polished exteriors, and I knew something they didn't. This was all being filed away, every word, every gesture, every condescending glance. About an hour into the event, I needed a moment to myself. The phoniness was getting to me. I stepped out onto the terrace, breathing in the cool evening air, when I heard voices from inside. The bathroom was just off the terrace, and the window was cracked open. It was them again, Patricia, Victoria, and Margot. "Did you see that dress she's wearing?" That was Margot. "I've seen better outfits at a department store clearance sale." Victoria's voice came next. "Well, what do you expect? That's Robert Hutchinson's wife. Don't get me wrong, Robert's a nice enough man, good at what he does, but he's not exactly top tier. She probably thinks volunteering at events like this will help her climb the social ladder." My hands gripped the terrace railing. Diane's dress had belonged to her grandmother. It was one of the few things she had from her childhood, altered to fit her perfectly. She wore it to important events because it reminded her where she came from. But these women saw only what they wanted to see. Patricia's laugh was sharp. "You're being too kind, Victoria. Let's call it what it is. She trapped him. These types always do. Find a decent man with a stable income, play humble and sweet, and lock it down before he realizes he could do better." "The worst part," Margot added, "is that she's taking a volunteer position from someone who actually needs it. Community service is for building character or resumes, not for the wives of successful men to play pretend." I stood there, frozen, listening to them tear apart the woman I loved, the woman who had built an empire from nothing, the woman who had more money in her investment portfolio than these three would see in 10 lifetimes combined. But I couldn't say anything. Not yet. Diane had been clear. "Let people show you who they are," she told me once. "Their assumptions say everything about them and nothing about me." I waited until they left the bathroom before going back inside. Diane was near the kitchen entrance, reviewing something with the catering manager. She looked up and saw me, and something in my expression must have given me away because she walked over immediately. "You heard them," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "The bathroom. The window was open." She touched my hand gently. "Robert, it's fine. It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." "I know," she said, and there was such kindness in her eyes. "But getting angry won't change anything. People like that, they need to feel superior to someone. Let them have it. It costs me nothing." That's the thing about Diane. She'd grown up in foster homes after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8 years old, bounced from family to family, never quite belonging anywhere. She'd put herself through school on scholarships, worked 3 jobs during her PhD program, and built Hartwell Pharmaceuticals from a single patent she developed in a university lab. She was worth $2.3 billion. She employed over 30,000 people. Her company had developed 47 drugs that saved lives every single day. But she never wore it like armor. She never weaponized her success. She just lived quietly, gave generously, and treated everyone with the same respect. The volunteers knew her by name. The catering staff loved working events she attended because she always helped clean up. She donated anonymously to hundreds of causes. The board of her company handled all public appearances because Diane preferred it that way. "I do the science," she'd once told a reporter who'd managed to track her down. "I let others do the talking." The evening continued, and I watched the 3 women work the room like predators. They positioned themselves near the biggest donors, laughed at unfunny jokes, and constantly scanned for opportunities. When they spotted me alone, they circled back. "Robert," Patricia said, linking her arm through mine like we were old friends, "you simply must come to our summer gathering in the Hamptons. It's a much more selective crowd. I think you'd find it refreshing." Victoria nodded. "Yes, bring yourself. You need time with people who understand your level of success." The implication was clear. Come without Diane. Come where you belong without the embarrassing wife dragging you down. I smiled politely. "That's very kind, but Diane and I don't go anywhere without each other." Margot actually patted my shoulder. "How loyal. That's admirable, Robert, really. But sometimes we need to think about our own social advancement. You've worked hard to build your reputation. You deserve to be in rooms where everyone is at your level." I am exactly where I need to be, and something in my tone made them back off slightly, but not before Patricia delivered one more blow. "Of course, we understand. Marriage is about compromise, isn't it? Even when we could do better." She said it with a sympathetic smile, like she was offering me comfort. I excused myself before I said something I'd regret. I found Diane restocking napkins at one of the beverage stations. She was talking to one of the younger volunteers, a college student who looked nervous. Diane was showing her how to fold napkins into elegant shapes, her hands moving patiently, her voice encouraging. The girl was beaming, soaking up every word. That was Diane. Always teaching, always lifting others up. The lights dimmed slightly, and the director of the Medical Research Foundation took the stage. Gerald Pemberton was a good man, former surgeon turned fundraiser, and he ran this foundation with genuine passion. He tapped the microphone, and the room gradually quieted. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. Your generosity continues to push the boundaries of medical research and give hope to families facing impossible diagnoses. The crowd applauded politely. I saw Patricia, Victoria, and Margot positioning themselves near the front, ready for whatever photo opportunity might arise. They'd been speculating all evening about the big announcement. A mystery donor had funded a new pediatric cancer research wing at the university hospital. $50 million, the largest single donation in the foundation's history. Gerald continued, his voice growing warm with emotion. Tonight, we have the privilege of recognizing someone extraordinary. This person has chosen to remain anonymous for years, working behind the scenes, changing lives without fanfare or recognition. Their company has developed treatments that have saved hundreds of thousands of lives. They've created jobs, funded research, and believed in science when others doubted. I glanced at Diane. She was near the side exit, probably planning to slip out and change into the dress she'd brought for the formal announcement. But Margot had positioned herself right in Diane's path, completely oblivious, blocking the way while she whispered with Victoria. This donor has contributed $50 million to build a state-of-the-art pediatric cancer research facility, Gerald announced. But more than that, they've just pledged an additional $30 million to create a scholarship fund for children who've lost parents, ensuring that tragedy doesn't end their dreams of education. The room erupted in applause. Patricia was already moving toward the stage, assuming she'd need to be nearby for photographs. I almost laughed. The sheer audacity of these women, constantly positioning themselves at the center of moments they had nothing to do with. Gerald raised his hand for quiet. The founder and CEO of Hartwell Pharmaceuticals has been a silent guardian of medical progress for 15 years. Tonight, she's asked to say a few words. Please welcome Dr. Diane Hartwell Hutchinson. The room went silent. Not the respectful silence of anticipation, but the shocked silence of people whose entire worldview had just shattered. I watched it happen in slow motion. Patricia's face drained of color, her hand flying to her throat. Victoria's champagne glass slipped slightly in her grip, liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. Margot actually stumbled backward, her heel catching on her gown. And then Diane walked onto that stage. She'd changed into a midnight blue gown, elegant and understated, her hair down now, framing her face. But it wasn't the dress that commanded the room, it was her presence, quiet, confident, utterly comfortable with who she was. She took the microphone from Gerald with a warm smile. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I want to start by thanking the volunteers who made this evening possible. I worked alongside many of you tonight, and your dedication reminds me why this work matters." Several volunteers near the back beamed with pride. The college student Diane had helped earlier looked like she might cry from happiness. I don't usually speak at these events, not because I don't care, but because I believe the work speaks louder than any words I could offer. But tonight is special. This research wing, these scholarships, they represent something personal to me. I lost my parents when I was 8 years old. I grew up in foster care, never quite belonging anywhere. Volunteers at a community center gave me my first science kit. A scholarship paid for my undergraduate degree. Kindness from strangers built the foundation of everything I'd become. The room was utterly silent now. Every eye was on her, and I saw people leaning forward, hanging on every word. This wasn't the usual donor speech about tax benefits and legacy. This was raw, honest, real. So when I built my company, I made a promise to myself. I would never forget where I came from. I would use whatever success I achieved to give other children the chances I was given. Because potential isn't limited to people born into privilege. Genius exists everywhere. We just need to look for it. The applause started softly and built into a wave of genuine appreciation. Diane smiled, thanked everyone again, and stepped off the stage with the same quiet grace she'd carried trays with an hour earlier. Nothing about her had changed. She was the same woman who'd been serving water to people who treated her like she was invisible. But everything else had changed. Patricia, Victoria, and Margot tried to disappear into the crowd, but there was nowhere to hide. As Diane made her way through the room, people parted like she was royalty, because in this world, in this room full of donors and philanthropists, she was. She'd done more for medical research than anyone else present. Her company's patents alone had changed the landscape of modern medicine. And these three women had spent the entire evening mocking her dress and questioning her worth. They attempted an interception near the bar. I was standing with Diane when they approached, their faces masks of desperate damage control. Patricia spoke first, her voice too bright, too loud. "Diane, Dr. Hutchinson, we had no idea. What an incredible surprise." Diane's smile was polite but distant. "Hello, Patricia. Are you enjoying the evening?" "Oh, yes, absolutely. We were just saying earlier," Victoria started, but Diane gently cut her off. "I know what you were saying earlier," Diane said quietly. "The bathroom window by the terrace was open. Sound carries." I watched three successful, powerful women realize simultaneously that they'd been caught. Margot actually went pale. Victoria gripped her clutch so hard her knuckles went white. Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. We never intended," Patricia stammered. "I know," Diane said, and her voice held no anger, just a quiet sadness. "You didn't know who I was, so you felt comfortable making assumptions. It's human nature, I suppose. We all judge what we don't understand." "We're so sorry," Margot managed. "If you'd known, you would have treated me differently," Diane finished. "That's the problem, isn't it? Respect shouldn't be conditional on status or wealth. Kindness shouldn't require a reason." She wasn't cruel, she wasn't vindictive, she was just honest, and somehow that was more devastating than any anger could have been. These women had shown exactly who they were when they thought it didn't matter, and now they had to live with that. I finally spoke up. "Ladies, I want to show you something." I pulled out my phone, opened the voice memo app. I'd been recording since the terrace, capturing their bathroom conversation, their condescending remarks, every ugly word. I have everything from tonight, every comment about my wife's dress, her worth, her intentions. Their eyes went wide with panic. "But I'm not going to use it, because my wife is right. Your words say everything about you and nothing about her. You'll have to live with what you said. That's punishment enough." I deleted the recording right there in front of them and pocketed my phone. Diane touched my arm gently, and we walked away, leaving them standing there in their expensive gowns, their carefully constructed social armor cracked and useless. We left the gala early. Diane wanted to stop at Bernie's Diner, this 24-hour place near our house. She went there every Saturday night, sitting at the counter, chatting with Rosa, the night shift waitress who'd worked there for 30 years. Rosa had no idea that the kind woman who always ordered pie and asked about her grandchildren was a billionaire. She just knew Diane as someone who listened, who cared, who treated her like family. As we sat in that diner, Diane eating apple pie and me drinking terrible coffee, I realized something profound. True power isn't about making people know who you are. It's about knowing who you are so completely that other people's opinions become irrelevant. Diane didn't need those women to respect her. She didn't need anyone's validation. She'd built something meaningful, helped countless people, and stayed true to herself through it all. The next week, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Patricia, Victoria, and Margot had been quietly removed from the foundation's event planning committee. Not by Diane, she'd never do that, but the board had seen how they'd treated volunteers, how they'd positioned themselves for credit they hadn't earned. Natural consequences, I suppose. When you show people who you really are, they believe you. My wife taught me something that night. She taught me that true dignity doesn't demand respect, it commands it silently. That real wealth isn't about the money in your bank account, but about the richness of your character, and that the most dangerous people to underestimate are those who choose humility not from weakness, but from unshakable strength. Diane still volunteers at events, she still wears her grandmother's dress, she still stops at Bernie's Diner every Saturday night. Nothing changed for her, because nothing needed to change. She was always exactly who she is. The only thing that changed was what other people saw. And maybe that's the real lesson here. The people who truly matter don't need to announce it. They just live it, quietly and powerfully, until the moment the world finally catches up. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor, subscribe and share it with someone who needs the reminder that quiet strength is real strength. Drop a comment telling me about a time you were underestimated. I read every single one. Remember, the people who truly matter don't need to announce it. See you in the next story.